into Trevor Chandler. And Bob's in the room, as you know, he was sitting right there. He's got to come back basically 11 points. That's not a real heavy lift in the campaign. It just takes getting out the vote, it takes identifying the vote, getting them to the polls, and proper advertising and a good strategy. You have to know your opposition. So these are the candidates that have a good chance of pulling it off this time around. And for the Assembly, we have 14 votable Assembly districts. We need 10 from Republican majority in the Assembly. Now, I hoped when I started this some months back that we could pull it off in the Senate too. That's going to be a little bit more of an outside chance. But if we get the governor and one Assembly, we basically, we're not red, we're purple, but that's a huge jump from where we were when we started. Senate districts. These are the California Senate districts. Again, you can see in the Bay Area, it's pretty grim. However, we do have some Senate ones we can win. Now, we did win one. Bill Emerson won in District 37, which was one of the changes we needed to make. But we also, we have another one, Sam Blakesley is up in his district. He's 7.76 when these numbers were crunched. He still needs to stay ahead to get the win. That's 2. Unfortunately, we've only got possibly 2, possibly 3 we can pull out. And to get it, we need 3 to get a majority in the Senate. I don't know if that's possible. But the ones that we can win, there's one there, you saw that one, of course, 3.7. So we're down for that one, we're just barely in front. And the other ones are a bit of a lift, but it's not impossible to do. I said 23 is not impossible, 21 is not impossible. So just to keep those in mind, those are other candidates that are going to need your help. In other local elections, these are the numbers for doing very well for himself. At he was up 16.3. If he maintains it, he'll be doing very well. Now, he didn't win, but I'm sorry. I went someplace else in that rate. He's up 16.3 at this point. Santa Clara, Scott Kirkland, who's running for Congress. And Jerry's, I'm sorry. David's also running for Congress. Scott's running for Congress. He's down. He's got to come back 13 points. I think that's a real doable deal. I've actually done some work for Scott. We'll do some work. I've done a lot of work on Michael Honda. He's beatable. He's very beatable. But we're going to sneak up on him anyway. Larry is doing very well for himself. He's up 14 points at this point. He's got to stay up in front. And Mike Wasserman's down 15.7. That's not a heavy lift. Now, when I talk about heavy lift, what it takes is it takes media money to make this thing, to make candidates get past their opposition, because they're dealing with some significant dollars in campaigns. California's got a very interesting way of doing business. You have to run 4 campaigns. You have to run basically an absentee voter, and then you run a primary election. Then there's the dead hole, which we're in now. Then you run an absentee voter, and then you run the general election. The dead hole works to the advantage of the incumbent, because they have name identification. Unless you've got a ton of money, like Bank or Carly, you've got to deal with the black hole that's between the general and the primary. A lot of states have like an August primary and a November general. Excuse me. And so you can start building momentum and keep building momentum through the general. Now what you have to do here is once you start the absentee ballot, that's when you start building your momentum. So you have to basically be ready to rock when the absentee ballots goes up. Yes, sir.
Question. Do you have any statistics about Dan Zagong? He's running against a low
Talk to me afterward. I've got some other statistics on my computer. I'm on the top of my head. So, what you can do about getting involved. Okay, we've all seen the ones on the left. We've all been there, we've all held the sign, we've all looked off the overpass. This is one of my favorite signs down there, Ramadan Authority No. 9, and you can probably read the rest of it. We need to put those signs down. and pick up these signs. Every time we turn out, we should be holding somebody's campaign sign up and say, vote for our person, or vote for this person. Frame of reference. Political campaigning is basically the practical application of common sense. You'd be amazed how much common sense isn't running around out there. It's about not making mistakes and taking advantage of your opponent's mistakes. A lot of times, and people just can't wait to pounce on them. They can't wait long enough to have an effect. So when they, somebody will say something, they'll turn around and smack them, and it happened too soon, and you lost any strategic advantage. So it's one thing to keep in mind. Prime example, you've probably seen the YouTube videos about Pete Stark and the Tea Parties. Now, if I was there, I'd have said, let's save those up, because we've got 2 weeks before the campaign where we can make a wonderful video and have all of the obnoxiousness on one video and run it for 2 weeks. It would do more, it would have more value to the candidate and give somebody a better opportunity of winning that seat than somebody else taking a bow 6 months out. So anyway, if you get those opportunities, save those, get them to a candidate, and I'll talk a little bit about that more a little bit later, but get them to them so they can use it when it will do them the most value, most good. Again, campaigning is not you, it's about them, your constituents, what your constituents need, and they will tell you. It's being a successful, you have to learn to be able to judge how your information is being accepted by the people you want to influence. Because that's what politics is. It's persuading people politely to do what you need to have done. And so you have to know what they want, you have to know where they're coming from, and you have to know how to get them. And for a lot of people, it's saying the same thing differently so they understand it in terms they understand. And it's very easy for us to get strident about what we believe and to start poking people one way or another in the chest and say, but haven't you read the Constitution? Obviously not. So we have to go someplace else to get them engaged in the conversation and then bring them in and have that conversation with them. Because you'd be amazed, maybe common sense will set in and they'll go, wow, you really got something going for yourself. Because more of us are conservative in this country than we are liberal. We just haven't found each other yet. Frame of reference. Sometimes it's reframing things. Now, liberals and Democrats have spent millions of dollars on framing issues. What they do is they take a conservative issue and they modify it slightly so it works to their advantage. Here's a very simple one. Conservatives talk about family values. Liberals value families. Different, but it sounds the same. So they'll go around valuing families, go around there talking about family values, and they basically neutralize this on that issue. So we have to be very careful how I tell people, walk like a liberal, talk like a liberal, act like a liberal, think conservative. Because by the time they know you're conservative, they'll be agreeing with you. So also a rule of thumb, this is when people make voting decisions. 30% of the voters make their decision by Memorial Day. So they've already made their decision, and that actually worked out. I think about 23 to 25% of the voters actually turned out for the primary, so that was about right. About Memorial Day. By Labor Day, the next 30% have made their decision who they're going to vote for. By Halloween, the third 30%, or 90% of the voters, have pretty much made a decision who they're going to vote for. But on Election Day, the last 10% make a decision. And if you're doing a good get-out-the-vote program, you can move 3 to 5%. You can move your vote 3 to 5% on Election Day. You can pick up half of that number or more. So it's very important to get involved in that regard. One of the things that I'll mention now is that one of the places I learned when I was growing into political consulting was the Moral Majority had a phenomenal campaign school at one time. And one of my instructors on Get Out to Vote was Carl Rove. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But through the 80s, they were unbeatable, and because they knew how to win elections. And they would basically do what I'm talking about here. They would find elections they could win. They would support the candidates that were closing on those elections, and they'd basically push them across the finish line. Oops, there we go. What's the volunteer worth? If you're volunteering for an organization, you have